How's it going, beautiful and amazing people? This is Takai, and today I'm going to be breaking down white balance. So when you're using your camera, lighting is what actually allows your camera to see anything and create images, and light comes in a variety of different color temperatures: daylight, tungsten, fluorescent, cloudy, and shady. Please stand up. And all of these different colors are presets inside of your camera's white balance settings. And the point of these settings is to set the camera's colors to match the same color temperature of the lighting that you're working with in your scene. And when it's not set correctly, your image is going to look very orange, blue, green, or pink. And when it's set correctly, it's going to look more like the way you would see it with your eyes. So let's go over exactly what all of these different settings mean and look like. The first setting that we'll go over is tungsten or incandescent, which are roughly the same thing, and depending on your camera, it'll show you one or the other. And these will fall into the warmer category of lighting. On your camera, you're typically going to be using the settings 2000K to 3200K when working with warm lights. 2000K is the color temperature of fire. So let's say, for example, your camera is looking at fire. If it's set to anything higher than 2000K, the fire is going to look very, very warm. Where if you set it to 2000K, then the fire, instead of being orange, it's going to look a little bit more white. It's not going to have that same warm feeling that fire typically has, because you're setting the camera's in-camera colors to take that orange and cool it down to a more neutral kind of white color. While incandescent and tungsten are the colors of household light bulbs and are going to range in the 2800K to 3200K range. Let's say, for example, when you're working with an incandescent bulb at 2800K, if your camera was set to daylight or 5600K, then the image on your camera is going to be very orange and your image isn't going to look correct. But when you set your camera's white balance to 2800K, then the image is going to cool down and adjust for the warm tones in the scene and have proper looking colors, and that orange is going to look more like a white. Same thing with tungsten. Tungsten is typically a little bit warmer at like 3200K. The concept is still the same. Next is daylight. Daylight is the most common white balance setting that you're going to be using, and its color temperature is 5600K. So light sources such as midday sun or most modern LED lights, such as the aperture lights like the one that I'm using now, they will be set at 5600K. And if you had your camera set to tungsten while in a daylight setting, the image in your camera is going to look very blue. That's because your camera is adjusted for warm colors, while 5600K is a colder color temperature compared to 3200K. Setting your white balance to daylight will warm up the camera's colors and adjust for the cooler color temperature. So if you were ever shooting outside and you had a very blue looking image, then that's because your camera is adjusting for warm colors when the daylight is actually not a warm color at all, because it's 5600K versus the 3200K. So to have your camera's color settings look normal, you would change it to daylight to match the daylight lighting. The next color temperature is fluorescent, and fluorescent lighting is both cool lighting and warm lighting mixed together, so kind of the in-between. And this color temperature is going to range roughly around 3800K to 4500K. And fluorescent lighting is the color temperature you're going to typically find in hospitals or office buildings. And if the camera is set on tungsten or daylight, then your image is going to look either green or pink, and either way it's going to look very shitty. So setting the camera's white balance to fluorescent will help compensate for those colors. The next two are shady and cloudy. Shady is 6000K to 6500K, while cloudy is 6500K and higher. And when your camera is set to daylight, your image is going to look colder in shade or overcast, so you would set it to either one of these to warm it up. And then there's auto white balance. Just don't use it. It sucks. Auto white balance can be helpful for getting the correct white balance without thinking about it, but that's the problem. Not thinking about it. Knowing how to set your white balance is important for color grading, matching cameras, working with tricky lighting scenarios, or even just getting creative with the colors in your lighting. If you use auto white balance, you're not actually teaching yourself how to fully understand your camera. If you like to color grade your footage, then it's going to make it a little bit more challenging for the colors to actually be consistent. And if the color temperature changes in camera, then the colors that were in the original color setting, it's going to change to a different shade of that same color, and it's just not going to be consistent, and it's just going to be hard to actually get it to look good. So that's white balance in a nutshell. It's kind of tricky to learn, but also extremely important to learn. Thanks so much for watching, and if you have any questions, be sure to leave a comment down below. I always try to make sure to answer everybody's questions as best as I can. Be sure to like the video and subscribe for more filmmaking related content, and I will see you guys later. Peace.